And welcome back to Straight Talk. Oregon lawmakers have once again postponed the vote on a massive funding bill designed to provide Oregon transportation agencies with billions of dollars. Now, the special session will now wrap up between September 29th and October 1st as Democrats wait for Senator Chris Gorsuch to recover from back surgery. Now, without his vote, they don't think the bill will pass. In a statement, Democratic Senate President Rob Wagner addressed the delay, saying in part the bill, quote, is important for all Oregonians who rely on our roads and the maintenance workers whose jobs are at risk. At the same time, we are not going to do anything that would put the health of our colleague at risk. Republican Senate Leader Bruce Starr says while they hope Gorsuch makes a full recovery, this entire situation was avoidable. Even if the bill does end up passing, Democrats admit it's only a short-term funding fix. Before passing the House weeks ago, the bill garnered a no vote from a Democrat criticizing the package, and that was Oregon Representative Annessa Hartman. Representative Hartman is joining us today to discuss why she made the lone Democratic vote against the bill. She was elected in 2022, and Representative Hartman serves House District 40, which includes Gladstone, Oregon City, and parts of unincorporated Clackamas County. She's also the third Indigenous person to be elected to the Oregon House. Hartman currently serves as the chair of the Early Childhood and Human Services Committee. Representative Hartman, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate your time.
Yes.
Okay, first, I want to ask you the big question. Of course, you were the lone Democratic vote against this package. Why did you decide to vote no?
Yes, how much time do we have? No, I think it's a great question, and I have been getting it a lot over the past couple of days. I think I want to be very clear that I was a no from the very beginning coming into this special session, and I had made that very clear. We were called to come back for gap funding to make sure that the positions that we were told that were going to have to be laid off, they were critical services. Roads need to be plowed, they need to be safe, people need to get to work on time and get to school on time and safely. When we got there, that is not the package that we had. The package was the transportation package. And so in the end, it wasn't a gap funding solution to hold us over, have some more robust conversations, meaningful engagement with other stakeholders. And it ended up being a much larger package. And for me, as with my district in House District 40, we have a very personal relationship when it comes to transportation. During my first session, we talked a lot about tolling and stopping tolling on the Abernathy Bridge, which runs right through my district. And so when it comes to the Oregon Department of Transportation, we are often wanting a seat at the table. And again, it was one of those moments where we didn't feel like we were being heard. And so I had communicated that if we were going to do gap funding, let's do gap funding, and then we'll continue to talk and move into the 2027 package.
And then it ended up being a lot bigger and kind of similar to what you had already seen.
Correct.
I see. Well, in a statement you wrote, quote, unfortunately for my small section of the state, trust has continued to be broken year over year. Even though I'm voting no today, it is my hope and expectation that meaningful, robust, and transparent conversations continue to happen in order to earn back the trust of Oregonians. Where do you think this mistrust lies, and where does this come from, and who is that directed to?
I think it's directed at the agency. It's directed at those that get to sit at the table and decide what are in these packages and in this policy. And it's directed at those who look at the budget line by line. We have seen over budget and mismanagement in these mega projects, and we need to sit there with each other, and how do we support each other? We had, you often have probably heard about the roadshow that has happened. One of those came to Clackamas County in Happy Valley, and it was clear we had business owners, childcare providers, elected officials, that all were sitting around a table, and it was like, let us be a part of the solution with you. And year over year, we continue to not be. And it was like, if we need to do tolling, if we need to do a tax increase, show us the why, the real why, and that you've done everything you can to get us there, and then we'll probably support you. But that just has never happened. And I think that part has been really challenging for us to get over, that we continue to be left out of that discussion.
And when you say agency, do you mean ODOT?
Yes, yeah,
okay.
Oregon Department of Transportation.
Okay. Is there a way to work on that trust, do you think? I know you kind of mentioned things that you hoped would happen, but what do you see going forward that could mend that?
Yeah, I hope so. I'll always have hope, even if it's a little naive at times. But I think that in part, this kind of discussion with the transportation package also led to my decision to not run again. And so going home and really being a voice and knowing how the building works and knowing how policy works in these packages, bringing that home, hopefully, and being able to continue to uplift us together. Because there is one thing that Clackamas County does really well is we talk about transportation, and more often than not, we kind of agree. We don't agree on a lot, but we agree on how we need to have transparent discussions around tax increases, around how the money is getting to our roads, jurisdictional transfers. We have a lot of highways in Clackamas County, and so I think I'm always going to have hope that we can increase that trust, but it takes two parties.
Well, because of the funding package raising taxes, it required a supermajority to vote for it, in favor of it to pass, so which meant it needed every Democratic vote. Of course, you voted against it. But something interesting that happened during the special session was that we saw another representative break from their party, which was Cyrus Javadi of Tillamook. He's a Republican, and he made the final vote needed for the bill to pass. Now, he has since announced that he's actually switching to the Democratic Party when he seeks re-election. But what was it like for you to break with your party in this case?
Yes, I think that is actually the number one question I've been receiving. It's not the first time that I have broken from the party. This was probably the first time that it was so stark. And the feeling in the chamber when I was standing and giving my speech and sharing my feelings towards this, that I was going to vote no, was palpable. And I could hear some sighs from colleagues and some frustration. But I have been very clear from the beginning that we need accountability and we need to look at the budget with a little bit more fine line. But I did share that it was one of the most intimidating votes that I've taken. Yeah.
It's interesting because, like I mentioned, the other representative is seeking to change his party. Did you get questions like that? Like, you're voting more as a Republican?
No, not really. No, my district is, it is very 50-50, if you will. And in fact, we have more non-affiliated voters than any Republican or Democrat. So I have the privilege to speak to so many different people and not just like what my caucus is, right? And so I take to heart that constituents come first over caucus, and I do that in all of the ways that I vote. But I've gotten the questions, but nothing that I'm turning into a Republican.
Did you hear from constituents before or after your vote?
A lot, yeah. So a lot before, and that's really what swayed me quite a bit to maintain listening to my constituents. So we get the mass emails from people all over, but it was a lot from local. And then afterwards, it was an outpour of support and thanks from across the state that we received in emails and voicemails and letters, in social media messages of thank you. And it was really wonderful to feel that, and they were personalized emails, and I think that's rare for us. We always get the form emails, but it was taking the time to write something that says just thank you for listening to us. It meant a lot.
After your vote, you also said in a statement, last week made it clear to me that party politics and bureaucracy get in the way of true people-centered solutions. What do you think is the path forward to more bipartisanship?
Yeah, I think that there's a few things. I really would love to see this state have open primaries. As I said, like in my district, we have more non-affiliated voters than Republicans or Democrats or independents, and I think people are really yearning to be involved, but you can't when you have a two-party system. It makes it really impossible. And I also think that for my colleagues, and this goes for both Republicans and Democrats, to take the time to listen and lean into this work with curiosity and not judgment, and we do that a lot. And I think people are constantly thinking about how is this vote going to impact my election next year, or how am I going to have to discuss this with my party rather than with the people.
Being someone who was an outsider to politics and now having this inside perspective and a different look, how has your perspective or even political ideology changed after this? Yeah,
that's a great question. I think I've learned that I'm a lot more fiscally responsible. I grew up relatively poor, and so I'm constantly saying, like, where can we trim, right? Like, I work at a nonprofit, so we're like, when the budgets get cut, what can we reduce, right? And so I have found that I am not as some people would say progressive with where or how we're spending our money, or I'm asking often questions. My first term, I called for an audit for ODOT, and that was like, oh, that was very Republican of you. I had a few people say that to me. I was like, why? Well, I'm just wanting to know where the money's going. And then I would also say that I definitely hold to heart local control more so than I probably, I started as a Gladstone City Councilor. And we often get steamrolled by state policy. And so I learned that a lot about myself as well. And that, I think the last thing is that I really strive to make any policy that I'm personally working on bipartisan, because I think it makes for good work.
Well, speaking to that, many viewers may perceive rising polarization in national politics right now. What practical steps would you want everyday Oregonians to keep in mind, or local leaders, when it comes to finding that respect and that trust across differences?
Yeah, I think again, leaning into these conversations with each other without judgment, and trying to understand where people are coming from. The whole meet you where you're at, and understanding. I think we've lost that a little bit, and I think social media, while can be great sometimes, often people are responding to things faster without taking a moment to think before they speak. But I think that there's opportunities, even within, like, locally, we try to have bipartisan dinners, and we try to understand where you're coming from. So at the very least, if someone comes to me and says, hey, I do support you, I can't vote for this, but I really appreciate the work that you've done, that goes a really long way with just building trust with individuals. And I think the last thing is probably, get to know your neighbor. We've lost that community touch of, like, when's the last time someone asked you for some butter or salt?
Yeah.
And so I think we just need to get back to, like, the values of our community and helping one another.
You've announced you won't seek re-election, as you've mentioned, and instead you plan to run for Clackamas County Commission. As you finish your term, though, what accomplishments are you most proud of at this time?
Oh, thank you for asking that. So my office does a lot of domestic violence, sexual assault work, and we accomplished removing statutes of limitations on civil sex crimes and child abuse sex crimes this year, and it was a really uphill battle. And I'm very proud of the work that we did, and in the end was unanimous across both chambers. And so any of the work that we have done in that area, which is challenging as a personal survivor of sexual assault, it's hard being in building and opening up in that way very publicly. But if not me, then who? And so I'm really proud of all of the policy we've passed over the past 3 years. And then I think the less sort of emotional ones are all of the ones that became bipartisan. We passed the squatter fix bill this year, which was a lot of work, years of work, and I think for some it's been decades of work. And then again, to get it across the finish line almost unanimously was a really big win.
Representative Hartman, thanks so much for being here. We appreciate your time. And thank you so much for watching. If you have an idea or person you'd like us to interview, we'd love to hear from you. Just send us an email to the address you see here on your screen, straighttalk@kgw.com. And you can stream Straight Talk on your own schedule. You can download our free KGW Plus app. We'll see you next week.